Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy.
Don't Touch Anything, written by H. DeFort. The human engineer had been standing for 5 hours in the airlock, and he was getting restless. Do we really have to go through the old test again? He whined, kicking the metal floor with his boot. Yes, Stan, we have to perform another EVA suit pressure test. The last few tests showed that the suit pressure and temperature control sensors are not yet calibrated properly for the human body. You wouldn't want to overheat while working on a solar panel outside a space station, for instance. I think I need to pee, said Stan, still whining like a puppy and rolling his eyes behind his helmet glass pane. Stan, you have taken a bathroom break less than an hour ago. According to human body function data, it is unlikely that you need to pee again after such a short delay. You haven't drunk anything, and your EVA suit sensors show an empty bladder anyway. I'm so bored, I'm sweaty, and my legs are numb. Murdoch didn't like working with humans. He found them to be impatient, whiny, and excessively curious. They lacked discipline and kept trying to optimize everything by bypassing the most basic safety measures or by disregarding the chain of command. He patted the human's shoulder in a rather slow show of empathy, thinking that this gesture might help the human relax a bit. He'd memorized dozens of nonverbal communication signs in 3 different human cultures. Still, he struggled to understand what humans meant when they said something like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that, whatever," but had no intention of actually performing the duty. These human-grade EVA suits had proven to be a logistical nightmare. Humans generate way more heat than any other species on board the ship, so additional heat dissipation had to be added. With the additional panels on their backs, humans looked like the mythical creatures from their world, a cherub. At least, these so-called cherub suits would provide much-needed radiation shielding to humans when they stepped outside of the ship. The EVA suits brought on board by humans were very primitive and fragile. We will now close the door and perform another partial decompression test to see how the heat dissipation unit performs. Please stand still, Stan, and we'll get a good reading. Murdoch and the other technicians walked out into the airlock and closed the heavy metal door behind them. Stan sighed and straightened his body, taking a pose of a statue. He then jokingly moved his legs back and forth, pretending to throw arrows from his arms. We get it, Stan. You're a cherub. Now, please stand still. We don't want your increased energy production to mess up the baseline. Stan sighed and went back to his standing position. The Kashtari have literally no sense of humor. Outside the airlock, Murdoch pressed his series of purple buttons, and his assistant tapped a few commands on a tablet with the paw. The air started being sucked out of the airlock with a loud hissing sound, an alarm bell ringing every few seconds. The test was going fine, and Stan's EVA suit was reporting excellent life support parameters. However, the temperature started rising inside the suit again after a few moments, and Murdoch had to abort the test again. The suit's monitor was showing yellow warning lights, as well as a message in blocky Terran characters. Decompression test unsuccessful. EVA suit overheating. I think we need a larger pump for the heat dissipation unit, said the Kashtari assistant. Murdoch moved his whiskers up and down in agreement. Hey, I'm getting all sweaty in here, whined Stan over the intercom. He was starting to feel like a clam in a clam bake. You can take off your helmet now. We will be back in a few standard time units. Murdoch looked through the door and saw Stan pulling one of the numerous cables holding sensors and measurement devices around him. He was trying to untangle 2 of the cables, even though this wouldn't have any impact on the test results. Unbelievable. Don't touch anything, okay? All right, answered Stan, pouting. Stan tried to scratch the back of his head with his right hand, and his glove bumped his helmet. He sighed, and he felt a drop of sweat rolling on his neck. Murdoch and his assistant walked away, and Stan was left to himself, all alone in a closed airlock. He promptly took off his helmet, pulling the 4 safety brackets and dropping it to the floor. The helmet wobbled a few feet away and stopped. He then pulled the safety brackets on his wrist, using his teeth to unlock his right glove. Using teeth to perform tasks was, of course, not part of standard procedure. He sighed in relief as the heat was dissipated into the airlock through the suit's neck and wrist openings. Stan started playing with the suit's parameters, increasing air circulation, adjusting the internal fabric's pressure on his ankles, calibrating the temperature control around his torso. He was much more comfortable now, and the suit's monitor was showing only green lights. Then he got really bored. He sat on his helmet and picked his tablet up to browse and find a casual video game to kill time. However, this was a Kashtari tablet, and there were no games on it, just boring work contents. Stan browsed through the on-screen menus, using his rudimentary knowledge in Kashtari language to try and find anything of interest. He was about to give up when he spotted an interesting entry. The entry roughly translated to ambient sounds that use harmonics to soothe, which was, of course, the overly complicated expression Qatari used to refer to instrumental music. Stan watched a 3-minute instructional video a few times, memorizing the command sequence. He then walked up to the wall console, tripping over sensor wires a few times and unplugged a cable in the process. On the airlock wall console, a warning message in Qatari politely informed him that the suit's monitoring and recording was disengaged. Oh well, more work for Murtek's assistant when he comes back, and more delays. Stan looked at the wall console. It was overly complicated, with over 30 buttons of various colors and a single blue terminal screen with a cursor. Despite their advanced technology, the Qatari were very conservative when it comes to interfaces. Where other spacefaring species relied on vocal commands, gestures, or cybernetic mind interfaces, the Qatari wanted to feel the presence of physical push buttons under their paws. Even the highly optimized touchscreen interfaces that humans used in their vehicles were frowned upon by Qatari pilots. Muttering to himself, Stan started punching in the sequence. Push the round red button, pull the yellow switch down, wait for the confirmation screen, push the square purple button. The screen displayed a cryptic message in Qatari indicating that system awaiting special command for airlock internal environmental action. That's the best translation Stan could come up with. 3 square purple buttons started blinking on the console. Stan tried real hard to remember which one he had to push to set the ambient music. The instructional video was showing only one blinking light. Oh well, what's the worst that can happen? Elevator music. Qatari acid jazz. Stan was giggling at the thought. He then pressed the first purple button, which was very unfortunate. Stan was not aware that due to the Qatari's eyes' wider light spectrum, these 4 purple buttons were actually 4 completely different colors. An emergency siren started blaring, which threw Stan off guard. He tried to run to the airlock door to push the abort button, but tripped over his helmet and fell into a mess of wires still connected to the wall. Then, to his horror, the outside airlock door started opening, and the air was quickly pulled into the vacuum of space. Stan just stayed there, trying to hold onto the wires and crawl towards the inner door. He remembered his academy training. Let all the air escape your lungs and keep your eyes closed. There was a perfect silence for what felt like an eternity. Murtek was chatting with his assistant and walking down the corridor leading to the airlock. He was carrying a replacement pump for the human CVA suit when he saw the blinking lights around the airlock door. He immediately understood that something had gone really wrong. He raced to the airlock's control panel and had the outer door closed immediately. His mind was racing. The human must most probably dead, being exposed to space's vacuum. This would have been fatal to any Qatari. Their air bladders were fragile and they're prone to internal hemorrhages from exposed to low pressure. But no, Stan was in pretty bad shape, but he was alive and well. He was bleeding from one ear, and regained consciousness within a few minutes. He managed a weak smile when he saw Murtek's familiar silhouette leaning over him. "Stan, what were you trying to achieve?" Murtek was feeling a rush of mixed emotions. Before Stan could answer, the suit's monitor console pinged and displayed a message in blocky green Terran characters. "Decompression test successful. EVA suit parameters optimal." Murtek looked at Stan for a long few seconds with a puzzled look. Stan just grinned and gave him a thumbs up. The Kastari report sent to Fleet Admiral Kodor gave a detailed description of the incident and contained 3 recommendations. 1. Avoid using violet colors for emergency buttons, as humans don't see very well in that part of the light spectrum. 2. Humans are incredibly tough and can survive a catastrophic decompression as well as 1 full minute in the void of space. No other known species can survive such an ordeal. 3. Don't ever leave a human alone with complex equipment. They might do something really stupid out of boredom. End of story.
The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Onholtz, White Band 420, Lord Asrakal, Arcadian, and Oakfield.